How does PwC take your company to the leading edge? They bring the sharpest minds in tech to your team, so you can bring the ideas that will transform your business. They're passionate about your industry, so you can walk into any room with every advantage. And they're with you every step of the way, so you can know you're headed in the right direction. PwC builds for what's next, so you can get there now. Get started at pwc.com/us/leading edge.
This is the Roger Stone Show, presented by Colonial Metals Group.
A man who's gone through hell, but he's kept going, and he's smart, and he's strong, and people love him. Not everybody, but people love him and respect him. Roger Stone.
Now, here's Roger Stone.
And we're back. Ken Khachigian served as a trusted speechwriter, confidant, and strategist to political legends and presidential giants, both Ronald Reagan and Richard Nixon. Whether in the Oval Office, on Air Force One, at Camp David, or the Western White House, Khachigian was an eyewitness and insider to some of the 20th century's greatest historical moments. When I worked for Presidents Nixon and Reagan, very much his junior, Ken Khachigian is one of the men I looked up to, and it is a great honor for me to have him join us today on The Roger Stone Show.
Roger, great to be with you as always.
Well, let's kind of...
Here from the left coast.
I'm delighted that you could join us today. As a man who has worked on presidential inaugural addresses, as well as some of the most important speeches by two American presidents, first I'd like to ask you your thoughts on President Trump's inaugural address.
You know, I worked on, I collaborated with President Reagan on his first inaugural address. That was a big moment for me, working with him on that historic speech delivered on January 20th, 1981, and a very historic address. And so my views on President Trump's address was exactly what he should have done. It was an authentic speech. It was. I probably would have changed a little bit of it. There was, I think, it was important. What was the most important about it was that he laid forth all the elements of his campaign that he promised, and that was the authenticity of his speech. That was the absolute most important thing. People expected him to strike an element of unity, to reach out to the opposition. I don't think that would have worked. That would have not been authentic. What was important was for him to lay down exactly what he did in his campaign. What I would have done just slightly differently is not probably put out the elements of the policies that sounded a little bit like a State of the Union. But you know what? That was Donald Trump. And I wouldn't change anything because he did what he wanted to do. And so you can't change what a person does. And so I think when he goes up there and does what is the real person, that comes off as authentic and real, and that's what's so different about him and his predecessor and some of his other predecessors. So to that extent, that was a home run on his part, Roger.
Well, as someone who's been around him for 45 years and someone who's experienced in national politics, he is truly unique. He is not handled, he is not managed, he is not scripted, he is not programmed. Right. He is just very much his own man. Perhaps it's because he didn't come from the world of politics. He didn't go through the chairs of being a congressman and a senator and a vice president before getting to the presidency. But I think what I like to say is he's not always eloquent, but he is always articulate, meaning you always know exactly where he stands. He leaves no doubt about that. He is combative because that is his nature. He is a warrior. But this sweeping victory, this historic victory, where he won every swing state and, the Democrats said it was impossible, carried the national popular vote, it's a testimony to his resilience, testimony to his toughness, to his stamina, to his persistence, and to his spirit. I have to ask you, how do you think he's doing? He's very obviously focused on getting a lot done in the first 100 days. How do you think he's doing so far?
Well, let me back up and say one thing. He had to let his adversaries know he couldn't be beaten down, and that was important. So to that extent, I applaud him very much so in that speech. He stood up and said, look, you can't beat me down. I stood above you and I won, and you can't sweep me away. So that was very, very important. So the first 100 days, he's gotten a great start. I really admire what he's doing. I was there at the first 100 days of the Reagan administration and sat in on the first cabinet meetings where President Reagan tried to get things done to make his cabinet cut back government. And he tried to do a lot of the same things that President Trump is doing. But he got pushback. And one of the reasons is that he didn't have the same strength from his staff. He didn't have the same crusading spirit from his staff. And Trump has the benefit of is that he was there before, and he knew what he wanted to do, and his transition prepared for this. So what they're doing is brilliant, absolutely brilliant, having all those executive orders prepared and making all these moves and doing it with lightning speed that is throwing everybody off balance. That's what this is absolutely stunning. I appreciate what he's doing immensely. It's going to go down in the history books, Roger.
I give enormous credit to the first woman White House Chief of Staff, Susie Wiles. You and I both worked with her. You worked with her on the White House staff. I worked with her in the 1980 Reagan campaign. She's an enormously capable, buttoned-down, organized woman. I've never heard her raise her voice once, but when you do something she doesn't like, when you make a mistake, you get a one-line text message that says, do you really think that this was helpful? And you just want to climb under your desk, you know? She is a great compliment to the president because she understands him. She knows how to carry out his wishes in the most efficient and effective way. She eschews the spotlight. She's never, ungrudgingly given an interview. She's given very, very few interviews. She understands that the focus should be on the president and his agenda, not on his staff members. I think she's an enormously capable woman. There is no one who could have done this job as she's done it. And that's through a campaign in which she took a lot of slings and arrows from others who thought they had a better idea of how to elect Donald Trump. I think it's among his greatest appointments. Ken, what do you think of these cabinet appointments? A very narrow but important victory for Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense. Hopefully that sets the stage for what is to come. But what's your thinking?
That was a excellent. It's going to turn out to be an excellent appointment, Roger. Mainly because I think what the problem has been in our armed services and the Defense Department is we've had a horrible recruitment problem. When President Nixon turned our military into the all-volunteer services, spurred on by Marty Anderson is the one who convinced him to do that. But anyway, he turned it into an all-volunteer service. You've got to have an esprit de corps. You've got to have somebody at the top who encourages recruitment, and that just totally fell apart under the Biden administration. And with somebody like Hegseth at the top, who's been in the military, who knows how to run the show in that respect, and who the enlisted men and women who are going to join the military now know that there's going to be a real leader, somebody who knows how to lead the troops and to battle and to do the job of the defense, American defense, that is to win a war if we need to go into war. That's a really great appointment. And then over at State, I'm really admiring Marco Rubio. I really like that appointment, and I think he's already sending signals across the world that America has a story to tell. So so far so good. And at the Justice Department, Pam Bondi, the way she handled those hearings and put Adam that sickly worm into place, put him in his place. That was so wonderful. She's going to be great at the Justice Department.
Folks, if you're just tuning in, we're talking to Ken Khachigian. When we come back, we're going to talk about his incredible new book, In the Room, with Presidents Nixon and Reagan. So don't go away. We'll be right back.
This is The Roger Stone Show.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. I don't know if you knew this, but anyone can get the same premium wireless for $15 a month plan that I've been enjoying. It's not just for celebrities. So do like I did and have one of your assistants switch you to Mint Mobile today. I'm told it's super easy to do at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
Smart Water Alkaline with antioxidant. 9.5 plus pH, now in cans.
Refreshing.
Made for every way you move.
Should I run a marathon?
Let's start with finishing that water. Smart Water Alkaline with antioxidant, now in a sleek can. For those with a taste for taste. Grab yours today.
This episode is brought to you by GM Genuine Parts and AC Delco. Get the most out of your vehicle with GM Genuine Parts and AC Delco original equipment. The only parts designed, engineered, tested, and backed by General Motors. You can find your perfect fit for most makes and models and choose from 3 tiers of parts, including GM OE or gold and silver aftermarket parts. Visit gmparts.com for more information.
This episode is brought to you by Temptations Cat Treats. Your cat will come running for the perfectly irresistible Temptations Creamy Puree and Temptations Lickable Spoon Cat Treats. The best time to feed lickable cat treats to your cat is anytime. Feed by hand for a playful moment, in a bowl for a creamy treat, or as a topper to make mealtime fun. Visit TemptationsTreats.com to learn more.
Richard Nixon, Ronald Reagan, George W. Bush, and Donald Trump.
They went after a guy named Roger Stone, who's sitting in the office. And I'll say this in front of Roger, he's no baby. And right now, he's cleaner than anybody in this place. No, they treated him very unfairly.
All of these presidents relied on one man to secure their seat in the Oval Office. That man is Roger Stone.
Roger Stone.
This is The Roger Stone Show, presented by Colonial Metals Group. Now, here's Roger Stone.
And we are honored to be with Ken Khachigian, trusted speechwriter, confidant, but here's the most important, not just a scribe, but a shrewd strategist who worked for Presidents Ronald Reagan, Richard Nixon, in my opinion, elected the last great governor of California, George Deukmejian. And he is the author of a new book, Behind Closed Doors, Inside the Room with Reagan and Nixon. If you're a political junkie as I am, or you love history, you can get this book by going to nixonandreagan.com. That's nixonandreagan.com. Now, there was a terrific review of this book in the San Clemente Times last week. Ken Khachigian, writing on X, formerly known as Twitter, saying it was a fair, balanced, and gave readers a special insight into the captivating stories in my book. Again, the book Behind the Closed Doors, Inside the Room with Nixon and Reagan. It's no wonder that the whiners at the Washington Post have boycotted a review of this book. It's because the rookie reporter out of Whittier College has written more concisely and crisply for the St. Clemente Times than anything that Ken has seen in the Washington Post for years. Ken, as someone whose books were bestsellers but who never got reviewed by the New York Times or the Washington Post, I guess I know how you feel. I guess those elitists at the Washington Post fear that reviewing your excellent book would offend their establishment elite sources who try even today to undermine and undercut Ronald Reagan's legacy as among our greatest presidents. My friend, let it fly.
That's the only conclusion I can draw, Roger. I mean, I'm just baffled by this. 2 months before the book's release, I wrote John Williams. He's the books editor at the Washington Post. I wrote him an email with my biography and a cover of the book, and I said, look, I wrote a really pleasant note, and I said, many of the reporters at the Post know me. I've been their sources for 16 years, and a generation I was a source for them. I helped them with their stories. Dan Balson, David Hoffman, and Lou Cannon, and Karen Temelty, and on. They all know me. And I said, would you please consider, doing a review of my book? It's the most important book about Reagan and Nixon written in the last 20 years, basically. And I never heard back from this guy. Then a month later, I followed up with him a nice note, pleasant note, and I said, I sent you a nice note. I'll send you a copy of my book, and would you please consider doing a review? And he didn't, no response, which is, insulting, because at least out of courtesy, you would get a response from this guy, John Williams. But, I think it's because they're pushing this book by Max Boot, who claims that not only that Reagan didn't win the Cold War, that Gorbachev won the Cold War, and also that Reagan is not a conservative but a pragmatist, and that Reagan's tax cuts didn't win over the economy, but that it was mainly because of Paul Volcker that brought the economy around in morning in America. I mean, it's all these crazy, not so revisionist views of Reagan that the Washington Post is pursuing, plus the fact that I think they're protecting all these sources that undercut Reagan during his administration that I've exposed in my book. So if you really want to put the screws to the Washington Post, you need to buy my book. You can get it at my website, ReaganandNixon.com, or go to Amazon, please, and help me out. And this is a great book on Reagan. It's a first-hand account, the only first-hand account that's out there now.
Time magazine called Ken Khachigian Reagan's word wizard. Newsweek labeled him as a lusty polemist with a gift for Reagan's gab. He is one of the smartest guys I know. The folks at the Washington Post have a lot to atone for because, as you and I both know, their entire narrative of Watergate is a fiction. Bob Woodward needs to admit that he was a U.S. Naval intelligence officer and he was briefing Al Haig. They need to admit that in the Moore Radford affair, the U.S. Pentagon was spying on Richard Nixon and Henry Kissinger because they didn't want to end the war in Vietnam, because they didn't want the overture to China, because they didn't want the strategic arms limitation agreement that President Nixon achieved. They know there is no deep throat, or at a very minimum, deep throat is a composite of a number of sources. The Woodward-Bernstein narrative of Watergate, which is sadly even today the most accepted narrative, is a fraud. I prove it in my book, Nixon's Secrets. It's been proved in a great new book by Nick Bryant, who tells the truth about Watergate. The small, slim volume that you must have. Folks, get Ken Khachigian's book at nixonandreagan.com. If you love politics, if you love those presidents, if you love American history, this is the book for you. Ken, thank you so much for joining us today on The Roger Stone Show.